What's going on, guys? This is Gene Jensen, and I want to tell you about a lure that has totally impressed me over the last few months. All right, so first of all, this has nothing to do with sponsorship or brand deal or anything else. I went to the tackle store, I bought this lure, I tried it out, I like it, so I'm going to tell you about it. And what this lure is, it is the Sense Duke 65 Lipless Crankbait. This thing has been really cool. I bought it just to kind of, I love lipless crankbaits to start with. I love how they differ from each other, and some are good for some things and some are good for other things. And I really had never heard anything about this lipless, so I grabbed one knowing Sense reputation and took it out and put it to the test and caught a lot of fish on it. And it's something I'm going to use a lot more of. And what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about it, what rods, what lures to use it with, and when to fish it and how to fish it, no matter what time of the year it works. So let's jump into it. All right, so when I'm fishing lipless crankbaits, I tend to fish them very aggressively. I rip them out of grass, I hop them up off the bottom. I'm always changing the speed, stopping and going and doing all kinds of crazy stuff with a lipless. And I want one that's gonna do that with one, without getting tangled up in the line, and two, without having a weird, turning up on its side when I'm burning it and that kind of stuff. Some just, you can't fish aggressively. The original Bill Lewis rattle trap, you can't get too aggressive with it because it'll roll up on its side. If you yo-yo it and drop it on a slack line, it'll start spiraling and get caught up in its line. And there's a bunch of things, but it works really good when you're just casting out and ripping it through grass and just slowly rolling it. It works really good, and it has its place. But this one, if I had to, after fishing this one for a while, if I had to pick the best all-around lipless crankbait that I've ever fished, this would be darn near close to it. It fishes very efficiently, if that makes sense. You're not gonna get a whole, I haven't gotten a whole lot of foul ups and things like that on it. It's a 5/8 ounce bait. It burns really well, and we'll talk a little bit about my favorite ways to fish a lipless crankbait. But no matter how fast you roll this thing, it's not going to turn up on its side. It's going to stay true. I wish, and I don't know if this would affect anything or not, I wish that when it fell, it had more of a wobble. It just kind of glides down, which is not a bad thing, but I like ones that when you're dropping it on a slack line that it wobbles down a little bit. This one just doesn't do that enough. But it's got great hooks. It's got a good hookup percentage. When I'm fishing it in the grass, I tend to remove the back hook and put a larger one on here, but I didn't have to on this one. I just removed the back hook. You just don't get fouled up as much, and you don't lose a whole lot of fish, really. Most of your fish are hooked on the front hook anyway. So just remove that front hook and you can fish it in the grass. And let's talk about the rod that I'm using. Now, the rods that I recommend for a lipless crankbait, there's just like two, I think. You want a rod that has a lot of flex in the tip, or quite a bit of flex in the tip and the first 8 to 12 inches. And then you want to go to a really good backbone so you can rip it through that grass real easy, and it doesn't bring the grass out back with it. So the rods that I recommend are either a medium fast rod. This is a 7'3" medium fast rod. It's a Speed Demon from Cast King, or a 7'3", 7'4" medium heavy moderate fast. So a medium fast or a medium heavy moderate fast are my favorite ones to use with it. And like I said, you've got to have that backbone, be able to rip it out of that grass really quick and be able to kill it and let it fall right back down. But you need enough flex to keep a fish from throwing it while you're fighting it. So kind of a balancing act there. Now, the reel that I would be using is a 7:3 to 1 gear ratio reel. I don't like an 8 unless I'm only burning it. 7.2, 7.3 to 1, some 7-speed reel, 15-pound test fluorocarbon. This is Cigar Tatsu fluorocarbon, but 15-pound test fluorocarbon will give you the best action. It won't float your bait up and that kind of stuff, and you can cast it a country mile. And then just make sure your hooks stay sharp. If you're like me and you like to grind it in the rocks and stuff like that, always check your hooks. But you need something like that. So when I first started fishing lipless crankbait, the fastest reel that there was available was a 6/8 to 1, I believe. And I remember you'd throw that sucker out and you'd want to burn it through the grass, and you literally had to hold your rod way up in the air and burn it as fast as you could, and you'd get bit, but you just couldn't get the speed. So nowadays with faster reels, it is a lot easier, but I still don't use any more than a 7.3 to 1, like I said, unless I'm only burning it. All right, let's talk about how to fish it. All right, so the best times of year to fish a lipless, for me at least, and for a lot of other people, is early spring, right when it starts to warm up, water temperature gets up into the 50s, the bass are getting ready to spawn in the 60s, and so on and so forth. Really good for that time of year, and that's where we're sitting right now. Bass are actually mostly spawning, but there's still some pre-spawners and there's some post-spawners, so they work really good. Then it gets really good again on grass lakes in the summertime when you're fishing shallow grass in the summer, and then in the fall in every lake in the country. When you get those fall temperatures and it starts to drop and those bass are feeding up, it's a really good bait. A really good bait for that. And then I very rarely ever throw it in the winter, but in the winter, if I was to try one in the wintertime, it would be a lot slower, dragging it on the bottom and hopping it and letting it fall down and sit on the bottom. I wouldn't be doing it with this bait. There's other lipless that are better for that. All right, so that's the time of the year. Now, how would I fish it this time of the year? It's like I said, it's pre-spawn. These bass get into predictable places, main lake points, secondary points leading back into pockets, and in grass, in funnel areas, in where a creek channel narrows down. You get into that grassy, patchy, grassy area, and that's where this really, really does shine. And what you want to do, and I'm not really deep enough yet. Let me work the boat a little bit deeper, and then I'll talk about how to fish it through the grass. Well, that was a lot more difficult than I thought to find grass on Guntersville. These guys must have had their grass sprayed recently. But anyway, hopefully this will work. I had to get out a little deeper than I wanted to. But so like I said, this time of the year they get into grass, and I'm not talking about solid sheets of grass that go on forever and ever. I'm talking about clumpy grass that has holes in it, things like that, or grass that is like here on Guntersville, you got eelgrass that's fairly low off the bottom, and then you've got hydro or milfoil that comes up in clumps, and they'll get in the holes in those clumps, or they'll get around that taller milfoil, and it's you busting this through that is what causes strikes. And that's a key point, is a lot of times these fish don't want to eat, and you're not trying to feed them, you're just trying to get them to react to this bait. And so what I'm going to do is I make a cast out. I let it sink all the way to the bottom, and then I'm going to slowly roll it back, try to get to where I hit that grass, and then as I pull through that grass, I'm just jerking it. And I'm almost jerking it on a slack line, okay? Do that one more time. So I cast out, let it sink all the way to the bottom, okay? So what I'm doing, you see what I'm doing? Watch this. I get it caught in the grass, and I go punk, and I pop it loose. And you got to focus. You got to focus on feeling it coming up to the grass. When it gets in the grass, you can wait a second. If it gets hung in that grass real good, you just pop it loose, but let it sink down. Oh, and do that, and catch a fish. Just like that. So I got it hung in some grass, and I went pop, pop, and I just let it sink down to the bottom. And I'm telling you, dude, treble hooks, careful. That's why I use a net in a kayak. Nothing worse than having a fish with treble hooks flopping around between your legs. Not me, bud. Not me. Look at that. Okay. So you just hop, or you just rip it through the grass, let it fall. And on that fall, if they're right up next to that grass, they're going to do exactly what this fish did, and they're going to bite. So let me get in here with some pliers. Pull it loose. Nice. All right, so the next way that I like to fish a lipless, specifically pre-spawn, all the way up until they start to spawn. So until the water temperature gets like 60 to 63 degrees. But 40, 50 degrees, all the way up to there, and then again in the late fall and on into the winter until they stop biting it. But you cast out, you let it sink to the bottom, and you hop it up. But I want you to notice, I'm not letting it fall on a slack line. I'm trying to keep that line with a bend in it, so semi-slack line, so I can, one, feel the hook or feel the bite when the fish hits. And when they hit, it's a thump. I mean, there's no doubt. One do that, and the other way is if I'm fishing a different style, like a Bill Lewis rattle trap, that kind of stuff, it will spiral in it if it's on a slack line, and it will get hung up in itself. So, but you just hop up and you let it fall on a semi-slack line. But like I said, the main reason is so you can feel the bite. Hop up, let it fall on a semi-slack line. And the reason this doesn't tend to work spawn and into post spawn, and sometimes it works in post spawn, but you've got to really be aggressive with it. But the reason it doesn't is because they are a lot more aggressive, and got me a shell. They are a lot more aggressive, and then and just burning it and doing what I just did, ripping it through grass and stuff like that works a lot better. Okay. All right. So the next way that I like to fish it is grinding it. Literally, and this one does a great job of doing that. I wouldn't do it in a stump field because it still will get hung up. But if I'm going to grind it, again, I'm going to pull that back treble hook off, and it just gets snagged a whole lot less. I actually have fished multiple different types of lipless crankbaits in stump fields and in laydowns. Like there was a lake that was just full of laydowns and full of fallen timber, and not getting it hung up because I removed that back treble hook. And it really does work. You just run the risk of losing a few fish when you're doing that, but not in the grass. It really doesn't. You don't lose a whole lot of fish doing that in the grass. But anyway, so you throw it out, same thing, let it sink all the way to the bottom. Like I'm fishing a point that doesn't have any grass or shell beds or a hard point that's got sand or rock or stuff like that on it, and it's called grinding. Let it sink to the bottom. I pull my line tight. I let it fall back down to the bottom, and I'm just slowly rolling it on the bottom is all I'm doing. I want to feel it thump in the bottom, but I want to be fast enough to where if I just speed up a little bit, I feel that vibration. And that's another thing that this specific lipless is really good at, is slow rolling. It gets started pretty quick. The vibration on it gets started pretty darn quick, and it's loud enough to really make a difference. All right, so last but not least is probably become my favorite way to fish a lipless crankbait, mainly to search for fish. And I've been doing this for years, and it really does work well out of a kayak, but you can do it out of a bass boat as well. And that's trolling, okay? I know it's not legal in some tournaments. I'm not saying go cheat in a tournament. I'm just saying that this is a great way to find fish, and I love doing it. And it's not slow trolling either, dude. Watch this, okay? I get this boat going about 3 to 3.2 miles an hour. And I just make an easy cast behind the boat. Hold the rod tip up high. And you gotta have a stiff rod for this. I'd even bump it up to a jig rod if I was doing that. Loosen your drag just a little bit. And as you come through grass and as it gets hung up in the grass, you just pop it. Ooh, I thought that was a fish and it was grass. And you just run around. And you play around with your depth a little bit, and you can drop down to 2.6, 2.5 miles an hour if you've got to fish a little bit deeper. But you want it ticking that grass. You want to feel it bumping and hitting that grass, or hitting the bottom or something like that. But specifically in grass areas. When I'm fishing a KBF tournament, which is legal to troll in KBF, I'll do this, and especially if I need like one more fish, or I'm struggling, or I need to find fish really, really fast, I'll do this, and I'm just going around. And even if there's floating grass on the surface that'll get hung up in it, you can feel it get hung up in it, and you can pop it loose. Your wrist gets tired, your hand gets tired, your arms gets tired, but it really does work well. It really does. So just trolling. And then once the bass hits, you stop your motor, turn around, you fight them into the boat. But the biggest thing is if you're going too slow, if you have your drag set way too loose, you won't get that hook set. But a lot of fun, absolute lot of fun. And I know I started doing this years ago with my best friend after he blew his shoulder out. We were having an electric boat. We were fishing an electric only lake, and he blew his right shoulder out, so he couldn't cast anymore. And so literally we trolled all the time, lipless crankbaits, and we caught the mess out of bass. And so really, really cool way to catch them. But this is the Sense Duke 65. Now, they've recently come out with a 55, which is the same 5/8 ounce bait, but it's smaller, and I'm going to give that a try. And I hear good things about it. It's just a smaller version of this, a smaller profile. So anyway, awesome. I'm glad I was able to show you guys this bait. And like I said, this is not a sponsored deal, nothing going on there. But like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water, go out and catch some fish, and have a great day. We'll see you.